Welcome back, focused learners, to today's explainer. So today we're dissecting this really fascinating paradox of human behavior. Have you ever tried so hard to be the good guy? Accommodating, agreeable, super kind, only to realize that people just aren't respecting you in return? Yeah, it's a harsh reality. But a lot of our well-intentioned, people-pleasing behaviors don't actually project kindness. Instead, they're perceived by everyone else as glaring signs of weakness. So today we're going to unpack exactly what those behaviors are, and more importantly, how to flip the script. Okay, let's dive into this. Before we look at the specific mistakes, we really have to ask ourselves a critical question. Why do we sacrifice our boundaries in the first place? Think about the psychological stakes of our everyday habits for a second. Most of the time, we aren't consciously choosing to be weak. No, we're choosing safety. We want to avoid conflict, we want to be liked, and we really want to belong. But in that subconscious quest for comfort and approval, we actually end up trading away our personal power. And that brings us to the source material we're analyzing today. It outlines 7 very specific, but incredibly common mistakes that make you look weak. Now, on the surface, this might just seem like a simple 7-point list, but it actually holds some deep, deep truths about self-worth and the psychology of how other people perceive us in both our personal and professional lives. Part 1, the perception of weakness. Part 2, the validation trap. So this validation trap revolves entirely around the idea that seeking external approval fundamentally projects a massive lack of internal strength. When your worth is tied to how others see you, well, you're no longer in the driver's seat of your own life. Let's look at points 1 and 5 from our source material together. Explaining yourself to people who don't care and seeking validation from people who don't value you. Just think about how much mental energy you waste doing this. When you constantly over-explain your choices to a colleague who is completely indifferent, or you seek a gold star from a partner or friend who fundamentally doesn't value your presence, you're literally handing them the keys to your self-esteem. You're working overtime to prove your worth to an empty room, and that instantly diminishes your standing, signaling that you don't believe your actions are valid on their own. And then we have point 2, begging someone to stay when they want to leave. Have you ever compromised your dignity in this specific, painful way? It happens in romantic relationships, friendships, even in business when a client walks away. When someone clearly signals they want out, begging them to stay doesn't show them how much you love them. It shows them how little you love yourself. It's a desperate grasp for control that actually exposes a really profound inner void. To summarize this whole validation trap, remember this absolutely critical takeaway. External approval cannot replace internal worth. The intention behind these actions is usually a desire to connect, right? Or maybe to save a relationship. But unfortunately, it doesn't read as loyalty to the other person. It reads simply as a weak dependence on others. Basically, if you don't validate yourself first, nobody else's validation will ever stick. Part 3, failing to set boundaries. Now, what's really interesting about this theme is how it focuses on the complete forfeiture of personal space and how a lack of accountability severely damages how others view you. There is a massive difference between taking healthy accountability for your actions and point number 3 on our list, apologizing for things that aren't your fault. Taking responsibility when you mess up, that's a sign of strength, maturity, strong leadership. But reflexively saying, I'm sorry just for taking up space, or taking the blame for a team's failure when you literally had no part in it, is a defense mechanism. It's a quick way to deflect tension. But to the outside world, this constant, unearned apologizing makes you look submissive, unsure, and fundamentally weak. Which brings us directly to point 4, letting people cross your boundaries without consequences. We hear the word boundaries all the time in modern psychology, but here is the cold, hard truth. Boundaries are entirely meaningless if they aren't enforced. If you tell someone, hey, don't speak to me like that, and they do it again, and you still stick around, well, you haven't set a boundary. You've merely made a suggestion. You're signaling to others that your limits can be safely and repeatedly ignored. The key synthesis here is that boundaries require enforcement. Failing to provide real, tangible consequences for a boundary breach directly invites a perception of weakness. Because if there's no cost for disrespecting you, people will absolutely continue to disrespect you. Your strength is measured by your willingness to enforce the rules of your own life. Part 4, the high cost of peace. We often avoid conflict at absolutely all costs. But let's look at point 6, staying silent when you should speak up. You might think you're being polite or just keeping the peace in the boardroom or at the family dinner table, but your silence is rarely interpreted as politeness by those around you. Instead, it's almost always misread as a lack of courage, a lack of conviction, or just a lack of ideas. When you consistently swallow your true thoughts, you basically train people to overlook you. And that leads us to the seventh and final point on our source list: accepting less than you deserve just to keep peace. This is the ultimate signal to others that you do not value yourself. Whether it's a lowball salary offer, a half-hearted friendship, or a partner who gives you the bare minimum, accepting it just because you're afraid of rocking the boat tells the world exactly how cheap your price is. The hard truth is, artificial peace costs your self-respect. The price of avoiding necessary friction is how others perceive your overall value and strength. Real peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice and fairness in your relationships. If you have to shrink yourself down just to keep things calm, well, you aren't at peace, you're just in hiding. Part 5. Reclaiming your power. Recognizing these specific behaviors isn't meant to make you feel bad. Actually, it's the absolutely essential first step to fundamentally changing them. You can't fix a leak in your confidence if you don't know where the water is pouring out, right? And this brilliantly illustrates the whole picture. When you look at all 7 points together, explaining yourself to the uncaring, begging people to stay, making false apologies, allowing boundary breaking without consequence, seeking validation from the unvaluing, staying silent, and accepting less for peace, you can clearly see the common thread. Every single one of these mistakes is a choice to prioritize another person's comfort over your own self-respect. So I want to leave you with this. We've unpacked the psychology behind the perception of weakness, and we've seen how quickly and easily we can unknowingly give our power away. But the path to respect, both from others and from yourself, starts with a single decision to act differently. So what does this all mean for you? Which of these 7 mistakes will you stop making today? Choose one, enforce your boundary, and start reclaiming your strength. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.